Imagine you are walking down a pitch-black dirt road at midnight in the year 1920. The air is freezing cold and the ground beneath your boots is pure, thick mud. There are no streetlights here, no bright highway signs, no gas stations for miles. Suddenly, you see a shape in the dark. It is a massive, heavy wooden truck parked right under the tall trees. Its radiator is still leaking hot steam into the night air. Inside the tiny, cramped cab, a man is trying to sleep. He does not have a real bed. He is curled up on a hard, cold wooden bench, wrapped tightly in a single, scratchy wool blanket. He is shivering from the wind blowing right through the open cabin. And as you walk past, one natural thought shows up in the back of your mind. Why is that guy sleeping out here in the woods? Why endure the freezing cold, the bugs, and the miserable hardwood when there is a warm local inn with a soft bed just a mile down the road? From the outside, it looks like a terrible choice. It looks lonely. It looks like a desperate act of a man who has nowhere else to go. But here is the thing you need to understand. It is not a sad choice at all. It is not even a mistake. In fact, by the time this video is over, you will realize that you are looking at the very beginning of a revolution. You are watching a carefully calculated decision. This single driver, freezing in the dark on a forgotten dirt path, is a vital part of a massive hidden system that built the modern world. Every time you see a truck parked by the road today, you are seeing the legacy of these early pioneers. You just never noticed the deeper logic behind it. Welcome to Simple Things Analysis. This is the place where we take the ordinary things you walk past every day, things you look at but never truly see, and we pull back the curtain to show you exactly how they actually work and why the world cannot run without them. To understand why this tired driver stays with his truck, we have to travel back to a time before highways existed. We have to look at the brutal reality of the 1920s. Let's start with the invisible rules that forced these men to stop, right where they stood. Let's start with a massive surprise. When most people look at a photo from the year 1920, they think it was a time of complete freedom. They think there were no rules, no speed limits, and no control. They imagine a driver could just hop onto his wooden seat and drive for days without anyone asking a single question. But that is a complete illusion. The reality was much more strict and much more dangerous. As early trucks became heavier and faster, a major problem appeared on the dirt roads of the nation. Drivers were working themselves to death. There were no corporations running things smoothly back then. It was just one man, his machine, and a massive pressure to deliver the cargo on time. To make a living, early truck drivers would stay behind the wheel for 20, 30, or even 40 hours straight without a single minute of real sleep. They fought the freezing cold, they fought the heavy iron steering wheel, and they fought their own exhaustion. But human biology has a hard limit. Eventually, tired drivers started falling asleep at the wheel. Massive wooden trucks, weighing several tons, were crashing into fences, horses, and small houses. It was a deadly hazard, and the government had to step in. This is the exact moment the very first version of truck driving laws was born. In the 1920s, early labor and transport rules started to appear. The logic was incredibly simple. After a long day of brutal physical work, a driver was legally required to stop. No exceptions, no wiggle room. If your hours were up, you had to pull over immediately. But how did the authorities track this in a world without computers, GPS, or digital screens? They used a system that was beautifully simple, yet incredibly strict. They used the paper logbook and the pocket watch. Every single commercial driver had to carry a small, official paper journal in their pocket. Every time they started the engine, every time they stopped to load boxes, and every time they took a break, they had to write it down by hand. They had to record the exact minute, the exact location, and the exact reason for the stop. The police officers of 1920 did not have radar guns, but they knew how to read a logbook. If a cop pulled you over on a lonely dirt path at 2 in the morning, the very first thing he asked for was your book. If the math in your journal did not match the time on the officer's pocket watch, you were in massive trouble. The fines were huge, and you could lose your permit to haul goods forever. So when you see that tired driver sitting in his dark cabin under the tall trees at midnight, he isn't there because he wants to look at the stars. The clock expired. His legal hours were completely used up. By law, that heavy wooden truck was frozen in place. It could not legally move an inch until the driver completed his mandatory rest cycle. A warm local inn down the road did not factor into the equation at all. The driver simply did not have the option to go looking for one. He had to stop exactly where he stood. But this opens up a much bigger question. Even if the law forces you to stop the truck, why choose to stay inside the freezing, miserable cabin? Why not just walk a mile to the nearest bed? To understand that, we have to look at the terrifying world outside the truck window. To a modern person, the answer seems completely obvious. If you are forced to park your vehicle for 10 hours, you do not sit in a freezing metal box. You open the door, step out onto the ground, and walk to the nearest hotel or boarding house. It is a simple, logical choice. But this logic assumes something that was absolutely not true in the year 1920. It assumes that a local inn was actually a better option. First, we have to look at the machines themselves. A commercial truck in 1920 was a brutal, monstrous piece of machinery. These trucks did not have modern air tires filled with smooth cushions of oxygen. They ran on giant, heavy bands of solid rubber wrapped directly around heavy wooden wheels. There was no suspension system to absorb the hits. When you drove a vehicle like that onto the rural roads of 1920, you were not driving on smooth asphalt. You were driving on unpaved dirt paths, deeply cut by heavy wagon wheels, full of sharp rocks and hidden holes. In the spring and winter, these roads turned into giant rivers of pure, deep mud. If a truck driver decided to take his massive, multi-ton vehicle into a small historical town to find a place to sleep, he was taking a terrifying risk. The moment those solid rubber tires left the main road, the heavy truck would sink into the clay like a stone in water. It would get stuck instantly. There were no heavy towing trucks in 1920 to come pull you out. You were completely on your own. Even worse, the infrastructure of the country was built for horses, not heavy machines. If you tried to cross a small wooden bridge on the way to a town tavern, you could easily break the ancient planks. Your entire truck, along with thousands of dollars of valuable cargo, would plunge straight into a river. And let's say you actually made it into the town safely. Where do you park a 20-foot commercial vehicle? There were no dedicated truck stops back then. There were no wide gravel parking lots behind the local motel. Main streets were tight, packed with hitching posts for horses and small Model T cars. Parking a giant cargo truck on a town street was illegal because it blocked the entire community. So what about leaving the truck by the road and walking into town on foot? That sounds reasonable until you actually look out the window. Imagine it is 2 in the morning. It is pouring rain and the wind is howling through the trees. You are parked on a lonely logging road, surrounded by miles of dense black forest. There are no maps on smartphones to show you the way. There are no flashlights with long-lasting lithium batteries, just a dim oil lamp that could blow out in a strong gust of wind. Walking a mile through unfamiliar woods in the pitch-black darkness was a great way to get lost, fall down a ravine, or break an ankle. If a driver got hurt out in the wilderness, nobody would find him until morning. When you balance the options, the cold, cramped cabin of the truck suddenly stops looking like a punishment. It looks like a fortress. It is dry. It keeps the rain off your head. It is a solid piece of ground that you know is safe. The driver stayed inside the cab because, in the chaotic and undeveloped world of 1920, the truck was the only place he could truly control. But there was another even more terrifying danger waiting out there in the dark. A danger that involved criminal empires, high stakes, and the cargo itself. Now we arrive at the most dangerous part of the story. In the modern world, when you think of a truck stop, you think of a safe, bright place with security cameras, big lights, and plenty of people. You think of a routine rest break. But in the year 1920, an empty road at night was not just lonely, it was a battlefield. To understand the massive risk, you have to look at what was happening in society back then. The 1920s was the era of prohibition, the rise of massive criminal organizations, and violent street gangs. Criminal networks realized very quickly that robbing a bank was difficult and dangerous. The police were waiting there, but a heavy wooden truck moving slowly down a dark, empty forest road, that was the perfect target. It was a rolling gold mine, and it had absolutely zero protection. Cargo theft in the 1920s was a massive, organized corporate business for criminals. Gangsters did not just wander around the woods looking for random trucks. They were highly organized. They had spies working inside the shipping docks in the big cities. They knew exactly which truck was carrying valuable tires, expensive clothing, high-end alcohol, or vital medical supplies. They knew the route, they knew the schedule, and they knew the driver was alone. An empty truck cabin parked outside a local town inn was not just a vehicle. To a gang of thieves, it was an open invitation. It was a free prize. If a driver decided to leave his truck by the side of the road to walk to a warm bed, he was leaving thousands of dollars of cargo completely unprotected. The thieves would arrive in a quiet black sedan, step out with heavy iron tools, and empty the entire wooden trailer in less than 10 minutes. By the time the driver woke up at the comfortable inn and walked back to the road in the morning, his truck would be stripped clean down to the chassis, and the consequences for the driver were brutal. In 1920, there were no modern insurance policies to cover the loss of cargo easily. The driver was legally and financially responsible for every single box on that trailer from the exact second it was loaded. If the cargo disappeared while you were sleeping soundly in a hotel bed across the street, your career was instantly over. You would lose your job, you would lose your reputation, and you would be forced to pay back the massive debt for the rest of your life. Sleeping on that hard wooden bench inside the freezing cabin was not a question of comfort. It was a custody decision. It was an act of survival. The driver stayed inside the cab because his physical body was the only lock on the door. He was the guard. He slept with a heavy iron wrench or a shotgun resting right next to his hand on the seat. He stayed within arm's reach of the payload because he knew that if he stepped away for even a single hour, he could lose everything he owned. This extreme dedication, this constant danger, is the exact foundation that built the massive supply chains we depend on today. But how does this brutal history connect to the modern products in your house right now? To see that, we have to look at the final piece of the puzzle. Here is the part that usually gets completely skipped in history books, and it is the exact part that connects all of this brutal history directly to your daily life right now. When you open your refrigerator tomorrow morning and grab a fresh carton of milk, or when you pick up a package from your doorstep that arrived just 12 hours after you clicked a button online, you are not just looking at modern technology. You are looking at a system that was reverse engineered around the raw physical sacrifice of these early 1920s pioneers. Logistics software today does not just track where a truck is. It tracks human limits, every single supply chain rule, every delivery window, and every wide parking zone behind your local grocery store exists because these early drivers proved that a truck cannot run without a safe, controlled place for the driver to rest. The next time you are driving down a modern highway at midnight and you pass a long row of giant dark sleeper cabs sitting quietly in a rest area, do not feel sorry for the person inside. Do not think it is a sad choice. And do not assume they could not afford a warm room across the street. That driver is not stranded. They are exactly where they are legally, strategically, and logically required to be. They are parked 30 feet from a payload that will stock the shelves of your city before you even wake up. They are guarding the goods that keep the modern world alive. The truck cab is not a compromise. It is a calculated fortress. It is a mobile home built for the most important workers in the global economy. 100 years ago, early drivers slept on cold, hard wooden benches in the middle of terrifying, pitch-black forests to protect the goods of a growing nation. They fought the mud, they fought the cold, and they fought violent criminal networks just to move cargo from one town to the next. They laid the very first bricks of the invisible system that keeps your life running smoothly every single day. The modern truck does not stop. It just rests, and then it rolls again. That is the grand system, the deep history, and the hidden logic behind the simple thing you never thought twice about. If you want to pull back the curtain on the world around you, if you want to understand the hidden mechanics behind the ordinary objects you walk past every single day, you are in the exact right place. Subscribe to Simple Things Analysis, turn on notifications, and join us as we explore the incredible hidden logic of the world we live in. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next analysis.